Hello, everybody. It's the old bear from the old bear's den of Bigfoot, and today this is going to be the first in a series of 6 videos that are going to be together. I'm going to tell you everything that I've learned over 30 years and everything that I've dealt with over 30 years when it comes to Bigfoot. I'm not going to pull any punches. You won't get names or areas that these things happened in because there are private people that are involved in some of these, and I don't mean to do that to you, but if I don't, somebody might get in trouble or might get harmed through this, so we're not going to do that way. And we're sitting out here in a undisclosed place here in West Virginia. We got this little fire going, so it's a little warmer. You know, the wind's a little chilly today. So, but it's a nice, pretty sunny day. It's a beautiful day to be out in the woods, and we hope you enjoy this. And I'm going to do this with a not a moderator, but I have a very good friend that's going to ask some questions and stuff, and I'm going to answer them and tell you everything that happened for the first 5 years in this video. The second 5 years will be come out a week later, so on and so forth, all the way up through 6 videos. So I hope you enjoy it. Hopefully somebody will learn something, and it may save their lives if they're out in the woods and dealing with a Bigfoot. Or if they got Bigfoot coming to their home, maybe they can refer to this and it'll help them out. And that's why I'm doing it, is to help people out, not harm them. So I'm going to turn it over to my good friend. And, buddy, it's all yours.
Well, got a question for you. How old was you when you first experienced Bigfoot?
I was 16 years old. Just turned 16 in August, and I saw one in December.
How did you take it? How did it make you feel? What went on with your mind? Was you scared? Multiple questions there. Was you scared? Was you stunned? Curious?
Well, the easiest way to describe it is the January of that same year, I was at home with my parents and my younger brother and my grandmother. We all lived in this house in Charleston, and we watched a movie called Boggy Creek. And at the end of the movie, I looked at my dad and I said, "Dad," I said, "those things ain't real, are they?" He said, "No, son, I've never seen none. I've been hunting since I was in my early 20s, and by that time my dad was, he was 50 years old at that time, 30 plus years of hunting, and he'd never seen one. But what happened was we were deer hunting that day, December 3rd of 1984. We were deer hunting, me and my dad went, and we were out in Worth County, West Virginia. I'm not going to disclose what, the place was. Basically what happened was this Bigfoot come out from behind a large boulder, and it was following some does that had come out. And I was sitting there on the bank on a little flat above the boulder about 20 feet away, and had we use rifles here in West Virginia, a 30-30 rifle. It's a lever action rifle, and it was one my dad had given to me the year before at Christmas. And I was expecting a buck deer to walk out, a male deer, and this thing walked out, and when it walked out, it surprised me because, I took my dad's word for it. My dad's, I respected my dad, and I respected his opinion, and I have all the way up through my life with my dad and my mom. I respected their opinion on everything. I mean, that's just the way we was taught. And this thing walked out, and I'm sitting there, and I've got my thumb on the hammer, and this thing it seemed like it took an eternity for this thing to finally leave. Uh, it just finally noticed that I was there, turned its complete body around, didn't turn its head, turned its complete upper body and legs and faced me and took a step. When it took a step, it growled at me, bared its teeth while it was growling, and I took that as a sign of aggression. And I'm a 16-year-old kid. I've played football. I've played football against guys bigger than me, stronger than me. I was never afraid. And I thank the Lord for my big brother. He was in the Air Force, and with the training that my dad had given me and my older brother had given me, I wasn't afraid at that time. But after everything was said and done, this thing took off and ran up behind the boulder and went up to the holler, and that's when I got up and started up the hill to the road, and the thing screamed and it shook my insides. At that point, I started getting scared. I had the rifle at full. I had the hammer all the way back, and I was holding the hammer back with my thumb, and I started trying to force my feet to move faster, but I just couldn't seem to get them to move fast for nothing. And got to the truck, ran into my dad on the way at the end of the truck, maybe 100 yards from the truck, and he saw the look on my face, and he saw me with my thumb on the hammer and it all the way back. He knew something was wrong. And once that happened, we went home, and on the way home, I finally told Dad everything that happened. And when I told him, he just looked at me and he said, "Son, I believe you. You've never lied to me. You've not given me any reason to doubt your word." And on the way home is when I really got scared and I was afraid. But at that time, I was a teenager. And it was pretty rough on me for about 3 years. I still had that fear that it might come back. It might catch me somewhere and catch me off guard and eat me. But that's how I got into it.
What later years there? How old was you when you started trying to do some research or got inquisitive about them? Look for prints and different things in the woods. I mean,
I was about 17. I was almost 18 years old. I was 17 at the time, and I hadn't told anybody. And about 17, I was almost 18. I went back out to where I saw this one, and by this time I'd looked up in books and everything that I could find on these creatures, and had talked to the BFRO, tried to make a report of my sighting, and they wouldn't take the report. But through that, I got in contact with a few other people in the area that had seen these creatures, and talked to them and asked them about what they had saw and how it reacted when they were around, and that's about the time I got into going out and doing wood knocks, and I even tried putting food out for them at one point, and that was a mistake. I'll never do that again. So about between real close to being 18 years old when I got into doing, looking for footprints and stuff of that nature.
Alrighty, now we're back again. What in those first 5 years after you seen your first Bigfoot, and then you started doing a little bit of research or investigating on your own, what did you find? What describe to us in that period the things you found, how you done it maybe, because of your limited resources. We didn't have internet, so and you've been a hunter and taught how to look for trails and things. Give us that little bit of background.
Well, after I first started, I turned 18 and I would go out. I wouldn't go out every weekend, but I was too busy chasing girls too at that time, and I'd go out on the weekends and go out in the woods, places that I've hunted before, and places that people that I'd ran into and would mention the word Bigfoot or Sasquatch, and they would say, well, yeah, we saw them hairy boogers, or we saw that booger up in this county at this time, and I would go up and look around and try to find tracks, and it's tough to find tracks in a lot of ground here in West Virginia, because if it's red clay, whenever it gets wet, it's wet for a day and then it starts drying completely out. And once it dries out, tracks start disappearing. I mean, they start falling in on themselves. And, I'd found a few footprints and found some tree twists. And I found out, about tree twists by talking to people here in West Virginia. They would see strange things, and trees twisted in a certain way that it couldn't be wind, because now the trees around it were doing it. And I'd heard about Bigfoot making whoops and howls and other sounds, and hitting trees and stuff like that and making that sound. The what everybody calls the.
Well, let me ask you
tree
this:
whoop.
On the things that you found, your twists and breaks and crimps and stuff like that, did you ask other people if they had seen things like that and what they thought it was? And
yeah, I had seen, talked to other people, because I would hear about somebody seeing one, and then I would go to that area and try to find that person and try to talk to them and ask them what they had seen. And, some of it seen footprints, some had seen, tree twists and tree bows, and they would hear wood knocks and screams and stuff at night when they were out. And that's what I was doing, was getting all the information from local people.
what did they think it was? What was their opinion?
Their opinion was they was a wood booger. And they just, they had no opinion whether it was human or not human, or they just knew it was there, and they had saw it, and that's pretty much what us mountain people, at that time knew about them, because you didn't have no internet.
Right. That's what the mountain people called them, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Hairy man, wood boogers.
Here in West Virginia, they have a special name, the Yahoo. But that's for certain counties here in West Virginia, because they had a different type of scream at night.
Alrighty, next question. Let me, we're covering your first 5 years here of, from your first experience, and you just talked about your personal research, just going out and looking and finding things and talking to the mountain folk, neighbors, and different stuff like that. And during that, did you see any more? Was there any other experiences? What's the things that stood out to you?
Well,
or made you more interested?
Well, after about my third year doing this, about three and a half years into it, I ran into a gentleman up in Nicholas County, and he pointed me to an area, and getting in that area was, you couldn't drive in there. You couldn't even ride a four-wheeler in there. You couldn't even ride a horse into there. For the simple fact was, the logging roads that was there were trees pushed down. And when I say trees pushed down, I'm talking about not little trees. I'm talking trees that you could stick your arms like that around it, and still your hands not touch. You know, you have 6-8 inches between your fingertips. And these trees were pushed over. These were healthy trees. They were, the root ball was still on them. They were pushed up out of the ground. And it wasn't a bunch of big trees. It'd be a big tree here, and then you go a few feet and on up the road, and maybe another 100 feet or more, and you'd see another big tree pushed across the road. You'd been chainsawing for 8 hours just to get near the head of the holler on the logging road. I walked in there and got up in there, and it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I had went to the head of the holler that morning and looked around and turned around and was coming back out, and I don't know what it was, but I had this feeling I needed to stop. And I stopped and stood still for probably 5 or 10 minutes, just listening and looking around, and heard a limb break. You know, like something heavy stepped on a limb. And it wasn't that far from me, and I just stood there beside a tree, and I was wearing camo, and I was looking around and caught a glimpse of movement. And it was a dark brown in color. You know, it would match into the background real quick, and this thing was walking through the woods. And I guess at about the same time that I got a good picture of this animal, of this Bigfoot, it sensed that I was there. And when it sensed that I was there, it turned towards me and started walking down the hill, off the hill towards me. And it got probably, I'd say, 25, 30 yards from me, and stopped and stood there and stared at me, trying to figure out if I was part of the tree or if I was something else. And it started doing a low growl at me, and when it started doing that, I had a rifle with me at the time, and I took the rifle off my shoulder. I moved. It got me to move, and it just kind of stood there and looked at me and watched me take the rifle off my shoulder. And when I started to bring it up, it turned and it let out a big scream, and then it took off running, and it dropped all fours running away from me. And I watched it run out the bench, same bench I was on, and it ran out there probably 100 yards, and it stopped and stood straight up again and screamed again, and then it just kind of walked back towards the top of the mountain. And that kind of stuck out into my memory. You know, in the first 5 years, I only saw the two, and both of them, to me, were, you know, not real aggressive, but aggressive to the point that they were growling at me, and they didn't want me there.
Wow. All right. Pretty interesting. Now you've made an extensive, a more detailed video on this on your first 5 years. What's the name of that video so that way people could go check it out?
My first encounter is on my channel. The name of it is Why Old Bear Do This, and it's like the 4th video from the beginning, and it gives you the full story of why I got into this, and a little bit of detail on too. a lot more detail on what the Bigfoot looked like and how it reacted when it finally saw me there and everything like that. But yeah, y'all go check that out. And all right, guys. So that kind of sums up my first 5 years. I know it's not a lot of exciting things in it, but that tells you what I did. A lot of investigators out there got started the same way I did, and I want y'all to take what I learned and what happened to me and the way I did it in the first 5 years, and that's what most investigators do. We go out and look for signs of them, and you might get lucky and see one. It don't happen every time you go out, so don't expect it. When you start expecting to see one, you'll never see them. When you're not expecting it is when they show up. So I hope you enjoy it, and this will conclude the first 5 years of why Old Bear do this and the series. Thank you all, and may God bless each and every one of you. Y'all have a beautiful day.